talking about here. This is really more of a conversation about what we see as three specific areas that illustrate the kind of work you do and the kinds of tools that you use. And that could be driven by a number of factors. It could be size, it could be culture, it could be types of projects. So we're going to go into that. And what we hope to do is kind of help you identify where you sit along that path, and understand as well a bit of how do I recognize if I'm in a position to maybe take a jump to a different place and maybe utilize a different type of tool. And I think that's what we're hoping to do here. We're going to go into some examples, and we're going to talk about some of the characteristics of these three places, and hopefully that resonates with all of you.
Let's move forward, Greg. And I
Yeah.
think into that first part of this operational maturity, and very much what we called ad hoc, the type of tools we're looking at here, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so this ad hoc space is really kind of that beginning space in my view. It's often uh, it's often taken by companies that are looking to do a little bit more. They maybe had nothing in place. They're using tools that are available to them, readily available to them, or often free tools that they can start to pick at and create some level of organization. Obviously, I mean, these are things like tools that you already have. You have your Microsoft platform. Most everybody's using an email platform of some sort. And so in there you have a thread like Teams, or with Google, you have Google Chat, right? You've got these kinds of built-in tools that are readily available, and so you use them. And you kind of figure out how to make them work for you because they're fixed in structure. They don't change. You just sort of, I like to say, shoehorn yourself into whatever that platform can do. Um, that includes things like spreadsheets, right? So you're capturing a lot of data. You're trying to keep it organized with some metrics like due date. I need to know what it is I'm doing. I need to know when it's due. And then you start to expand from there. Okay, now I'm managing who am I assigning this particular request to? And you start to build on that. And as you start to build, things start to get a little bit more complex. They start to become a little bit more cluttered, right? And I've seen spreadsheets that have 55, columns wide. You have to scroll for a while in order to actually see parts of it on the far right. And that often presents its own set of challenges. Um, we also,
But you can't knock that, though. I mean, especially when we
oh
talk
no,
about Excel in particular. Everybody uses Excel, and with good
absolutely.
reason. It's a phenomenal tool. From just very quick, easy tables to we've seen some really really impressive setups over the year where you will have a new client come through and say, hey, we want to automate our processes or streamline our processes, and here's how we work right now in Excel, and you are scratching your head looking at it going, this is unbelievable what you've got here. So we're not talking about this being in any way underpowered. It can be really really good.
Yep. No, and again, back to the original point. This is a very common place, and it's a functional place, and this might be a good place for some companies and with some workflows and some scenarios, your business case, and it might work great. And I'm going to add on to that because Excel, as you said, is a great tool. It's super powerful, and it can do a lot of things. It's what I was illustrating, what I was trying to convey is I think sometimes we can take that to a point where it becomes overly complex. And the amount of work it takes to manage a single row, when you start to layer on your process, I'm not just taking in requests, but I'm actually looking at how does that move through all of these different people? How do I move that around from one sheet to another sheet? That's where it becomes a little bit more clumsy because that's not what it's designed to do. It's really there for calculating data, right, and more financial purposes. So that's one of those options. But the other one that stands out to me, um, is more like chat threads. And that's something that's also available to you. And those are great because you know what it does? It brings you into a space where you are focused. You're looking at a topic, you're talking about a topic. You can be assured that everyone in that thread or that channel is talking about that topic with you. And so putting documents in, pulling them out, sharing information, we see that all the time, right? Across all of our customers. But
We
that
do.
too, right?
Yeah, we do, but I think I think as we kind of have this conversation, I think that there's often a bit of I suppose my brain is always around the process and the people. And I think
Mhm.
you're quite executional, I think, from your background as well, and looking at the work and moving it through. It does work well. It's also very easy to begin to pick that apart a little bit. And, I think it's while Excel is powerful and while chat tools are can be good in terms of what you can share in terms of information, files, etc. It is one dimensional though.
Mhm.
For the most part, and I think it's quite easy. I think when we have these conversations with new clients or clients that are working in this way right now that need to begin to organize their work a bit more. I don't want to use the word pitfalls, but the downsides to this are very apparent. They're quite easy to pick apart.
Yep. And on top of that, one of those downsides is that they're utilizing multiple versions of this. They're using an Excel to manage parts of it. They're using a thread as well to manage communication and collaboration on projects. So there's a lot of duplicate entry. You're putting information into all these different places, and that's just two of them. But we see it frequently where there's more than two. There's three, four different types of tools that are all being utilized, from a finance platform to a chat to an Excel sheet. And so you have all this duplicative work that's going in. And it kind of brings me to one of the focal points of this particular one, which is the number of people that are actually working and organizing in this space, in this ad hoc space. Typically, tell me if I'm wrong, Sean, we see individuals doing this. I am a project manager. I'm filling out my workload. I'm doing it independent of everyone else. Maybe I'm using a cloud-based spreadsheet tool and I've got this thread over here, but I'm managing my work, right? I have all my work and I'm sharing that out with my people and I'm the one who keeps it. So I am responsible for every bit of that, putting the data in, finding the data, capturing who's working on what today, sharing that out with everybody. Tell me if this is resonating with anybody, right? And then having to manage all of the updates of that. Where am I? Did the person complete their work? And you have to go back and then keep all this. Now, that's okay if you've got maybe one or two projects, but when you've got 50 to 100 projects going on, it becomes really hard to do that. And what I
Yeah,
see,
I think it's that, Greg, but also often the people that we talk to, because around control, you talk about that Excel sheet, because there's so much logic goes in behind those, especially the sophisticated ones. It's the person at the middle that's coming to us saying, "Hey, I'm at my wit's end here. I have to go out and pull this information out of everybody and collate it back in. And there's very special ways in which we need to do it. And everybody keeps breaking my sheet. And
yeah,
I really need this a bit more organized." That's one, which is that piece of you know they need to mature from this central
mhm.
cat herder, for want of a better word, the person running around trying to get all that information. They need to mature to, I suppose, disseminate the responsibility for gathering data and being able to see it across teams.
Absolutely right. I totally agree with that. I think that that part of it is where we kind of roll into the how do you identify that maybe you're suited for a change. What is it about the next level that changes the landscape a little bit? And one of the things that I see often, and this ties directly into that fact, is that adoption of a tool is a key indicator. If you have very low adoption, you're looking at the scenario of ad hoc. You have a few people doing all of the input for everyone, managing everything for everyone. that may or may not be the best way for you. You may have more resources that you can identify and say, maybe it's not just individually everyone's doing their own thing, and therefore have all of these different ways of organizing, which is impossible to report against when you're in that ad hoc space. But maybe it's we're going to consolidate that. We're ready. We want to make that jump. We want to say we have a team of people. This team is going to be responsible for entering all that information and tracking, and it's going to be more sophisticated and it's going to be consistent so that you can pull reports and metrics and look at your work and who's doing what and are we on time and all of that. And that's a big part of it.
It's huge, and let's look at that organized side of things. So we're moving from ad hoc to organized, and the change in tools from those emails, from those chat tools, from more spreadsheet based tools to what? We're looking here at, I suppose, quite a lot of tools. You see the Kanban style, the cards, and moving them through swim lanes within there. Maybe some simple automation starts to come into play, and by that I mean if this then that automation, and not, I suppose, what we'll talk about in Streamlined in a while, and maybe some simple approval processes in here as well. So I suppose what you're starting to look at there, Greg, is they're the type of tools we're talking about. The characteristics of those, or what drives you to those, wherever you're going to start to talk about that, what as people either come into us or need to move to here, what are those key characteristics you're seeing?